So awesome. So basically what's going to kind of happen today, for those of you who are joining us, is we're going to sort of welcome you all, introduce ourselves, our staff here, and then kind of hit some of the most frequently asked questions that we get, and then open it up for you all if there's anything, any other questions you have, anything you want to elaborate on. Since I'm already talking, just because I happen to be the first staff member that logged in, my name is Mary Furlong-Minkoff. I am the curator of archaeological collections here at Montpelier. So I run our archaeology lab and do a lot of that type of work. But I should really turn it over to our director and my boss, Dr. Matthew Reeves, for the official welcome and getting going.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Reeves. I'm Director of Archaeology at Montpelier. I've been at Montpelier for just about 21 years now, so for a good long time. And as you can imagine, a lot of our research focuses are on the African diaspora, plantation archaeology, which is my research focus, but also including public archaeology, especially working with descendant communities. So yeah, we're very excited about this field school. One, because we weren't able to have one last year because of the pandemic, and we're really want to make this one work this year. We've I don't know if you all have looked at our website, but if you haven't and if you have, you probably have seen we do expedition programs, which are these week-long programs where people come out for a week and do archaeology with us. We started those last fall, and we've been really test driving some COVID procedures at the site that we found have been successful and have worked. And of course, with the field school, it presents a special challenge being a month long, but we're going to be talking a little bit about those. And Mary's created a really great presentation to go through and structure a lot of this discussion. But overall, the point of this meeting is to help you all understand what the field school is here at Montpelier, what the goals are, what to expect, both in the living situation, the daily work situation, what will be expected from you all, and then to help you all really put forward in your application what your interests are and to help to develop the best match between what we're wanting to do with our field school and what you all are looking for, because that's really, what the ideal an ideal application process is, to make sure everybody knows what they're applying for, and then you all showing how what you're interested in is a good match for what we do, and so everybody is syncs up. I know a number of you all have put in your applications in already. After this meeting, if anybody wants to redo their statement or alter some things, Sarah Lee, who you all have been working with, will be able to give you help on this. So, but yeah, Mary, what were you thinking? Have us do introductions of staff, go around? Okay, cool. So yeah, prior to being here at Montpelier, I worked for the National Park Service at Manassas Battlefield, and before that, I'd done a bunch of small projects across New York. I did my dissertation work up at Syracuse University, up in New York State, in Maryland and Virginia. But for my dissertation research, I looked at 2 early 19th century slave settlements in Jamaica, as in the West Indies, and did about 3 years worth of work there. Yeah, excited to talk tonight and meet some of you all later on. So move it to Terry.
Hi, everybody. My name's Terry Brock. I'm the Assistant Director for Archaeology here at Montpelier. I've been at Montpelier for almost 7 years now, and I've been I got my PhD at Michigan State University and did my dissertation research down in Southern Maryland, St. Mary's County, on a plantation site, and very interested. I mean, we all work at Montpelier on a plantation, so plantation archaeology is obviously a focus of research for all of us. But I also very interested in public archaeology, working with communities, and then also digital archaeology and how we can use digital tools to enhance our excavation methodologies, our data collection, and our public engagement. My primary responsibility at Montpelier is to oversee the field excavations. So that's mainly what my job is. So, but yeah. So anyway, I'll be spending a lot of time with the field school students this summer. Mary, are you next? Did you
Sure.
have one already?
So, like I said, my name is Mary Furlong-Minkoff. I'm the curator of archaeological collections, which means I'm in charge of the over 3 million archaeological artifacts that we have in our collection, which grows every single day. And I run our lab, which in the pre-COVID world was open to the public 7 days a week. In the post-COVID, current COVID, whatever we're living in right now world, we've set up a field lab for the warmer months. So I will be actually out at site throughout the entire field school, but running the field lab, which is going to be really exciting. So I'll be around you guys a whole lot more than I usually get to. I got my PhD at the University of Maryland in College Park. My dissertation work there focused actually on a free African-American community in Alexandria, Virginia, where self-emancipated folks had moved onto the grounds of a Union Civil War fort and were able to purchase the property after the war and create a community where they lived until the 1960s, where they were kicked off by the city to make a commemorative park to the Civil War. So I did a lot of work recovering the location of burials, working with the community, doing lots of oral history, lots of really kind of deep, engaged, immersive work, working with the community to help support their restorative justice efforts in Alexandria. Before that, I worked all over from mostly in Florida, but all across the Southeast, in Mexico, kind of the mid-Atlantic. I've worked for the Park Service. I've kind of floated around a lot of places. And I've been in Montpelier for about 5 years. So I'm really excited to have you guys here, and I'm gonna actually pass it to Chris. So Chris.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Pash. It's been a while since we've done one of these big group introductions. It's like, wow. I'm the crew chief here at Montpelier. I've been here for about coming up on 4 years and about a month and a half. So it's starting to feel like a while. I have my undergraduate degree from St. Mary's College of Maryland, which was in history and English. And then I turned to the dark side and did archaeology. It's more fun. And interesting, I have my master's degree from the University of Leicester in historical archaeology. And I did that on the temple and ice house and sort of looking at the enslaved usages of that space. So I'm sure when you all come, if you're interested, you could ask me questions and I'll talk for 2 hours about it. But we also have some YouTube videos on it on our website. So if you're that daring. Trying to think what else. Before coming to Montpelier, I worked at Historic St. Mary's City, the same places both Matt and Terry have some experience at. I think I was there for about 5 years, working on a 17th, early 18th century house site. So I'm pretty pumped for the field school this year. It's been too long, so very excited. And I guess I'll pass it on to Taylor, oh yeah, there's Taylor.
Hi everyone, I'm Taylor Brown. I'm one of the archaeology technicians, and 2 years ago I was in your place. So in 2019 I graduated from St. Mary's College of California, which is out by San Francisco. And during my undergrad degree I had done mostly underwater work, so in Florida and the Caribbean. And then after I graduated, I came to Montpelier and did their field school. And after that, I was hired on as one of the archaeology interns. So I did that for a year. And then with COVID, with no field school last year and no new interns coming in, I was actually hired on as full-time archaeology technician. So I've been here for just under 2 years. And I'm not actually going to be there when you guys are doing field school, but I am here to talk about the internship and answer any questions you have, and also talk about Arlington House, which is where you guys will be living and where I am right now. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to answer some questions.
Awesome, thank you. And we have two other staff members that I don't think are on, Hannah James, who is another technician, and then Sarah Lee Hall, who is our program coordinator, who, if you've been emailing dig@montpelier.org, you've been emailing with Sarah Lee. So those are two other folks that are part of our team who you will meet this summer. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to start like a little presentation, and I'm going to sort of lead it, but I'm going to be kind of shouting out some of our other team to kind of talk on little bits of what we're looking at. So I assume everyone can see my shared screen. Head nod, yes, excellent. So what we tried to do here was think of frequently asked questions, I guess, if you will. Ooh, boom. So one of the most important questions is, where is Montpelier? You might be thinking Vermont. There's even a town in Virginia called Montpelier. That is not where Montpelier is. James Madison's Montpelier is located just outside of Orange, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes north of Charlottesville, about an hour and 15 kind of northeast of Richmond. You can see this map down here where that red dot, here's Charlottesville, Richmond's down in that big corner. But the nearest town is Orange. That's the town that has the grocery store. That's 6.2 miles from property. So this is not a walkable place. This is an incredibly rural place. Cell phone service can be spotty. There is no public transportation. There is no Uber. So this can mean that it's a complicated place to be at, particularly if you do not have your own transportation. So having reliable transportation is a really important component of field school. But it also means you have amazing views of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Our property has almost 2,700 acres and has great trails on it. And one thing you can drive to in 10 minutes is some of the best barbecue in the state. So that's really good. And for the vegetarians like me, they have barbecue tofu. So just as a side note. But this map on the left here is actually showing the red dot in the bottom is where Arlington House is, where students live. And all the way at the top where it ends is where the nearest grocery store is. So I put that in there just to kind of give you an idea of how far away from things we are when we're on property. And the other thing is, what is Montpelier? So you heard us all use the word plantation, which is an important component of what we're doing here. But in addition to being a plantation and everything that comes with that, we are a museum. So that means we're open to the public. A plantation inherently is also a site of trauma. And so we have that sort of contradictory nature of the history of the place, really contrasting also with the beauty of the place, the kind of physical landscape. We have a reconstructed landscape, meaning we're restoring it to what it looked like during its occupation. It's also the birthplace of the Constitution, because this is James Madison's house. So it's home to a president, a first lady, hundreds of enslaved people, as well as freeway overseers, Civil War camps, post-emancipation homes, and has a native history of about 8,000 years as well. So I'm actually going to turn this part over to Terry. So where will we be digging, Terry?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing our excavations this year in what's, oops, Mary, you just changed slides on me. Mary?
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I moved.
This is a picture of people digging. There we go. All right. We're going to be doing our excavations and at a spot called we call the home farm. And the photo that you see here is actually an aerial photograph of all of the home farm. It's about a 70-acre space that was really the agricultural center of the Montpelier plantation, really all the way from almost the mid-18th century all the way up to the mid-19th century. In particular, we're curious about the 1820s, 30s, and 40s, which was when what we call the retirement period, which is the time period that James Madison came back from being in Washington, D.C. as time as president. We have done, there are tons of sites in this area. We've done extensive gridded metal detector survey all over this area, have identified the overseer's location of the overseer's house, location of a number of field quarters, some tobacco barns, and most recently the location of what we believe is a blacksmith shop. The blacksmith shop, last 2 years, we've spent time at the overseer's house. So it's with the excavation units that you see open in this photograph are from that. And this year we're going to be going just across the road and putting excavation units in at the blacksmith shop. This is really part of a much larger, again, we're very interested in understanding what this landscape looked like, how the buildings were organized, what the lives of the people who were both enslaved and free, who were working and supervising and managing this area, what their lives were like, both in relationship to each other, what the context of slavery, how that influenced and dictated, and the decisions that the people who are living here were making, whether they are a free white overseer or whether they're an enslaved African American. The institution of slavery impacted all of their lives in crucial ways, and so trying to understand exactly how and what we can see in the archaeological record. So the blacksmith shop is a really exciting site. It's one we didn't really know existed until a few years ago. So we're going to be doing excavations there as the bulk of the field school. And then we're also going to be doing survey work where we're going to be examining some of the other sites that are in the home farm.
Yeah, so the next slide is what exactly would I be doing? So kind of expanding off what Terry just said, the first week of our field school is going to be you guys still at home. This gives you an extra week to sort of quarantine or give yourself some space after graduation or moving home or whatever it is that you've been doing during the spring semester. That's going to be filled primarily with online lectures and tours, workshops, and kind of readings and other coursework. The last 4 weeks of the field school, you'll be on property, living and working, like Terry said, unit excavation, archaeological survey, and also lab work with me in our field lab. And then we'll have some other special workshops and trainings and tours while you are here on property.
Mary, I'd just like to add into that, another big component of our field school is public archaeology and learning about public archaeology, giving site tours, and there's a big project that we do at the end of the year in groups that'll be a public archaeology focused project that that you all will get to develop and create. So really integrating that into your archaeological training as well.
Rebecca asked about where other skilled artisans were living and working. That's part of the study we're doing of the home farm. Is there's the blacksmith shop, but then there are other work areas. And then, you know, what we're discovering, like Mary mentioned, it's 2,650 acres. There are sites all over the area, and we're slowly doing surveys, metal detector surveys of all 2,650 acres. So during the field school, you're going to be exploring some of that. You're going to be seeing some of the survey techniques we're using to find these sites of labor and enslavement. So good question. We're asking the same questions as well.
All right, Taylor, let's talk a little bit about Arlington House.
Yeah, so Arlington House is actually located on Montpelier's property. It's about a mile away from the site you guys will be working at, so a 20-minute walk. And that is walkable. So Arlington House, built in 1848, it's definitely an old house, but it's been really well taken care of. So everyone who comes will have their own private bedroom. So you will have a space that's all your own. You don't have to worry about keeping your mask on. But there are going to be 2 kitchens in the house, one upstairs and one downstairs. And some bathrooms will also have to be shared. So there's definitely going to be some common spaces within the house where you'll be required to keep your mask on. That being said, Arlington is located on a gorgeous property. There's tons of outdoor space. We have a really nice screened in porch. That's a nice place to sit, and you guys can probably eat out there. And then we also have a fire pit. During my field school, probably every week on Friday, we would all have a fire and make s'mores and hang out there. So even with COVID, that's going to be a really good place for you guys to hang out. There's a washer and dryer on property. You guys would just have to supply your own detergent. So that's nice if you're going to be sweaty and gross in your field clothes, you can wash them right at home. Yeah, and so Arlington, it's become my home away from home. I've really loved living here for the past 2 years. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about what that looks like, I'd definitely be able to answer. Yeah, and the weather, so weather, it will be hot and it's often muggy, and yeah, it's humid, so it's definitely a Virginia summer.
Hot and humid. Yep, that's what it will be.
What is the animal pest situation like? Snakes, ticks, mosquitoes, etc.
Yeah,
ticks.
Yep. So out at site, there's definitely tons of bugs. I swear by bug spray, and you would want to do tick checks when you come in after being in the field. That's also why we recommend if you come, you want to wear long pants instead of shorts. Even though it's hot, it's usually nice to be a little more covered up, especially when you're out working. At Arlington, there have been a few snakes, and there have been a few snakes at site, but they're not poisonous. They don't give us any trouble, and we're usually able to take care of them pretty quickly. And most of the time, they don't want to be near archaeologists, so they get out of there kind of right when they see us coming. So that's not really something you have to worry about.
And one thing to add, there are mice at Arlington, and how we keep those in control. Taylor can talk about that, is keeping the place clean. That's really critical, is to well, there's field mice. I don't think we've ever had any roaches in the house, which would be absolutely disgusting. I don't know, I'd rather have mice than roaches, but because mice just come in from the field and they eventually will get trapped or just get bored because there's not enough food around. But at the site, we do try to control for ticks by keeping the area around it mown. We found if you don't mow it, you get a lot of ticks, but if you mow it, so we're looking for ways to mitigate all these factors. If we throw you all to the ticks and mice and snakes, we'll be throwing ourselves there too. So we don't want to do that.
Yeah, and one thing to say about mice at Arlington, the more people that are in this house, the less mice like to be here. So like living here on my own, I've had a bit of a mouse problem, but as soon as you guys move in, they'll kind of get out of the way.
I will say, as far as the field is concerned, you know, we are not going to be in the woods. We are not going to. It's a, you know, it's a relatively environmentally tame site. It's just going to be hot because it's not in the woods, so there aren't any trees. But so drink water.
Yeah, we're going to be farther from shade this year, so sunscreen, bucket hats, all that kind of stuff is great to bring. Cooling towels. But we'll have water and such.
Yeah, and we bring pop-up tents and all kinds of stuff out to the site to keep us in the shade and things like that.
So, what about COVID? Was, I think, sort of the next question. One of my personal favorite pictures of this is the field lab with the sanitizing station. So we have a whole COVID policy that we will certainly share with you guys. But just in general, we require masks on site and in all public areas of Arlington House and across the whole property. So the Montpelier property if you're on a tour at Montpelier, if you're walking in the gift shop, if you're doing anything on Montpelier, you have to wear a mask. All of our work for field school is going to happen outside. That means including the lab work or any workshops, tours, those kinds of things. The one exceptions would be, we'll, go on a tour of the interior of main house as well as one of our exhibits, but pretty much everything else is going to happen outside. As Taylor mentioned, for Arlington, each student's going to have their own room, which gives you a private space to demask, breathe air that's just yours. And also that gives you some privacy, which is just a wonderful benefit when you're living and working with the same people for a month. You're going to each have your own excavation unit, and so you will be separated from each other because each unit is 5 feet by 5 feet, and that gives you space to be away from your peers. We're going to regularly clean all of the equipment, any surfaces or high touch areas. And we're never going to gather in groups larger than what's set by the state of Virginia. So when I started making this presentation yesterday, the number was 10, and today the number has gone up to 25, but it has gone up and down from 10 to 25 repeatedly. So we're really trying to stick to that 10 number for right now, because we don't want to have 25 people in a group and all of a sudden be 10. It's much easier to add than kick out off of a site or an area. So we're really going to try to keep everybody in small groups throughout the week or the month. So I wanted to include this. Oh, sorry.
Sage asked a question about how many positions are available for applicants, which is relevant in this case. Normally we have about 15 people who get accepted to our field school. Because of COVID restrictions, we've had to reduce that number to 8. So it is it's going to be a much smaller field school than we typically run. So, which is unfortunate, but it's the reality for housing and managing the site and all of those things.
And Mary, there is a question on there that I put on there that you probably didn't see at the very bottom, is what happens if there is a COVID event? And that is something that we've thought about a lot, because with 8 to 9 field school students, about 8 staff, there's a lot of interaction. And what happens if there's a COVID event, if somebody becomes positive for COVID, is the field school has to end. There's just no two ways about it. And because of how long quarantine is, there's no way to do 10 days of quarantine and then have folks come back, because we're going to be moving into our next schedule. So this is why we are taking the COVID precautions very seriously, because the ramifications of COVID happening at the field school are dire. So that's why we're asking you all to, and us too, to quarantine before the field school. When you're at the field school, you're not allowed to go home for the weekend, because that's when COVID spreads. As you go home, you see friends, you go to somebody's birthday party, and these are events that have happened in my own family, and you bring COVID back. So just, we want to have you all know these procedures before, these policies before, because we're taking them seriously. Any violation of these is going to result in people being asked to leave or required to leave. And we take it as seriously as the drinking policy. We do not allow drinking on the field school. It's, not a party field school. It's something that we've taken seriously for a decade and have really good results from it, because we continue to be allowed to have field schools at Montpelier. So all this we take seriously to allow for the success of all of us and for the health and safety of all of us. So yeah, we, the staff, all of us have been talking about these procedures for the past year, but for the field school, we've been talking about them for the past month, and have really hammered out some, based on our experience with previous programs over these past 8 months, hammered out some procedures that we think will allow everybody to be safe. So thanks, Mary. I'd snuck that one in like 5 minutes ago at the bottom of your list. So,
and I think Matt, it's important to double down on that fact. We're a values-driven department. We take professionalism very seriously. It's one of our departmental values, and part of working on an archaeological part of an archaeological team, part of working on an archaeological project, is safety. We follow OSHA guidelines. We follow all kinds of safety protocols to ensure that our staff is safe. And following these COVID protocols is no different. Any archaeologial site that you'd go and work on as a professional over the past year, you'd be following all kinds of rules to ensure that your colleagues are safe and that you are safe yourself. And the interesting part about this experience is that housing is involved in it. So we need to make sure that we're as safe as we possibly can be in that regard as well. So this is part of being an archaeologist, is practicing good, important safety. And so these are new things that we've all had to adjust to and deal with, but every archaeologist in the country in the world is following new safety protocols to do this.
So the sort of next slide I wanted to include, because there's sort of the life of any field school, which can be complicated because you're living and working together. But I think a lot of times this is compounded by being on a plantation. So what's it like living and working on the plantation? Well, it's completely immersive because there is the main plantation in which you're working on, but it's also the house that you're living in was a plantation house. So it makes it incredibly complicated and a contradictory experience, you know, sort of the history of the place, the physical beauty, the way people react to the space. You can also feel incredibly isolated here because you're far away from family or, you know, access to things that maybe feel very familiar, but at the same time, you're always around people, your classmates, your supervisors. So you're both can be both isolated and never alone. I also think that particularly because this site is a museum, there is your experience with each other, your experience with the staff, but there's also visitors that come by, and often those visitors really don't yet understand the full history of slavery or racism or how those things are connected, and can say things that are really pretty terrible. And we do our best to support not only all of the students, but our staff, and to protect from those situations. But I think it is something we just want to put out there because particularly for folks who have never been to a plantation before, you can look at the pictures and it can look superficially really beautiful. And it's not until you're here and you're experiencing the place and learning the history of it that it really can hit you, sort of the overwhelmingness of sort of what has happened on this property. And particularly the nature of our work, looking at the lives of the enslaved community, the places they worked, the places they lived, that can be really painful sometimes. So this is in no way to discourage anyone, but it is just as we want to prepare you for the safety of dealing with COVID, we want to prepare you for your safety and your mental health for coming onto this property. It's something that's really important to us, that everyone that comes here has a positive experience during our field school, that they learn something and that they become professional archaeologists, and they can only do that if they feel supported and understood. So that's something we wanted to kind of put out there. So sort of now that we've sold you on field school through COVID regulations and a traumatic history, I see there is a question coming up, sorry. Do you think it is a more rewarding experience as an archaeologist to work on a project with such a dark history like this? I think personally, working on a project that can make a difference in people's lives who are living today is what makes working at a site like this really rewarding, because the work that we do, and in particularly when we have the opportunity to work with members of the descendant community, helping them reclaim their history, their land, their family stories, and being a tool in supporting their work to do that feels incredibly rewarding. So it's what is rewarding to me is not the darkness of the history, it's the potential to sort of bring light to the present. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, that's beautifully said, Mary. I wouldn't have anything else to add to that. The only thing I would is that we are committed to being an anti-racist department and pushing our organization to be an anti-racist organization. And as you can imagine, at a presidential home, there's a lot to unpack there. And like Mary mentioned, we're very, very fortunate that we have such a strong descendant community and committee that works with us as an organization. And I first see, you know, there's going to be some big changes happening here over the next year that especially involved with the descendant committee. These are the descendants of the enslaved Americans who lived and worked here at Montpelier. That for the field school, they're going to be part of this and see some of this happening, which is really exciting.
I would encourage you all to look through the Montpelier website and also the Digital Doorway website. We can throw links in the chat, but just to kind of get a feel for what our institution has been doing and how we talk institutionally about history, the Constitution, James Madison's slavery, a lot of things, because I think that overall it'll be a little bit different than what you're accustomed to. Did I just activate somebody else's Siri, or is that my own Siri that I activated? That's my own.
Thanks, Chris.
She's everywhere, man, the machines. But just to sort of give you a bigger picture, because the archaeology that's happened at Montpelier has been really informative in how we tell these stories on the property.
So when it comes to your application, there's a short answer essay section. What's really important is to emphasize why this field school is a good fit for you, for your interest, your goals, not just why you need a field school in general. So instead of just saying, well, I need to do a field school to graduate, is not the best answer, because there's a lot of field schools out there. There's thousands of field schools out there. So like Matt said, the application process is making sure we're a match on both ways. So we want to be the right match for you, just like we want you to be the right match for us. It's kind of like dating. And what you want to learn and what do you want to get out of this experience. And that's really important to us, because if we know what you want to get out of the experience, there's a lot of things we can teach you. And if we know what you really want to learn, we can really help you develop that. You also will need to get some recommendations. Make sure the people that are giving you recommendations are people that know you and know you pretty well. And be sure to remind your recommenders to submit their recommendations. We'll reach out to them, of course, but it's always good if you're, on them and making sure that they've got it done, because they get asked to, your professors are going to get asked to write dozens of recommendations, and it's easy to slip through the cracks. So what about the scholarship application? So we offer scholarship.
Mary, you skipped over a last bullet point there that was about the fact that it is competitive. And I think that's, yeah. Did you say that? I'm sorry. That it is. We do, like I said, we don't only have 8 slots, and we often get around 50 applications per year. So so it is a competitive process, and that's just only just because we end up getting so many applications. So don't be discouraged. Reach out if you have questions, and like follow the guidance here that Mary's put up. And if you don't get selected this year, there's always next year. Hopefully we'll have more slots next year too. And there are lots of things that we're always looking for when we're hiring or when we're bringing people on. And we'll talk a little bit more about the internship and stuff like that too. But just know that there's a lot going into how we're selecting that you may not even always have a lot of control over.
Sage asked, if you don't get selected, will you be informed? Yes. So often what we do, we often also set up a wait list. So you'll be informed if you are selected, if you're on a wait list, or if you're not selected. We will let you all know those things. So we offer scholarships for African-American students. This again requires another kind of short essay, and this really focuses on what your career goals are and how this field school will help you achieve them. So this is where you talk about if you want to go to grad school, if you want to work at a museum, if you want to be, you know, an archaeologist in plantation archaeology specialist, or if you want to be an amazing museum curator, whatever it is that you want to do and how this experience will help you get there. These scholarships cover our field school fee. So they don't cover tuition. So if you're taking the field school for credit, you still have to pay your tuition. It only covers the field school fee, and the field school fee we'll talk about in a little bit, but that covers the cost of the field school as well as your housing. And scholarship recipients, after you're informed that you've received the scholarship, we will ask that you submit a deposit in order to hold your place. And that deposit is fully refundable if you show up to field school, because what we don't want to do is offer somebody a scholarship to come. They say yes, they're going to come, and they don't show up, and then we're calling them to find out, like, where are you? And there's somebody else that we could have given that spot to. So that's why we have the deposit. Let's see. And then sort of expanding onto that is
Mary. Cameron asked how many scholarships are available. That's variable, Cameron. It's part of the selection process. So some years we have selected 6, some years we've selected 2. It very, very much depends on the applicants.
So can I get school credit, or do you have to take this for credit? Sorry, I got distracted by the chat while I was reading. So you don't have to take the field school for credit, which means if you're taking the field school for no credit, you're only required to pay the field school fees. You don't have to pay tuition to your university or to any other university. So if you've recently graduated, then you don't have to worry about paying tuition. If you do want to take the field school credit, there are several options available to you. We are accredited through James Madison University, JMU. So if you're a Virginia resident, that is your best option for affordable tuition. We are also accredited for through SUNY Plattsburgh. If you are, it should say out of state, not in state there. If you are out of state, if you're not a Virginia resident, SUNY Plattsburgh has more affordable tuition. And then we also—
Oh, Mary, why I put in-state there? That's for you pay in-state tuition, meaning that if you're from Nebraska, you, like Mary said, you probably don't want to go through JMU because you pay out-of-state tuition because you're not a Virginia resident. But we've got an arrangement with SUNY Plattsburgh where no matter where you're from, New York, Nebraska, Virginia, California, you're paying in-state tuition at SUNY Plattsburgh. So it's about like a third of the cost. So that's what in-state refers to.
Okay. And then you can also get credit through your university. So, but you'll have to set that up with your advisor and your university to make sure that they would consider our field school one that that they would accredit for you. And we have had that happen before. I know with students from UVA in particular, but other universities as well. But let us know if there's, so in case there's any paperwork or things that we need to do in order to meet the sort of demands of your university.
And there's a little bit of a catch with the other universities piece. We have arrangements with JMU and SUNY so that we get Montpelier gets a portion of the tuition back. And for other universities, we don't have that arrangement. So Mary's going to talk, we're going to do fees next, but if you do it through another university, it's not JMU or SUNY, you have to pay the no credit fee base, which will make sense in the next slide, I think. Sorry.
That's okay. So the field school fee, so our field school fee is $500 for field school. If you're taking the field school for no credit, or for credit, like Terry said, from a university that is not James Madison University or SUNY University Plattsburgh, there's an additional $200. So making your field school $700. We ask each of the students to pay a $50 housing deposit, which is refundable at the end of the field school as long as you haven't burned down Arlington House or caused some other significant damage to that. I don't think we've ever, as long as I've been here, I don't remember ever not giving someone their $50 back. Usually we have folks write a check, we hold on to the check, we never cash it, we just hand it back to you at the end of the summer. If you all still have checks. I don't know that college kids write checks anymore. There's also a $100 deposit due from all students. When you're accepted, we are going to ask you to pay a $100 deposit to secure your spot. For students that are receiving the scholarship, that $100 is refunded. For students that are coming without a scholarship, that $100 goes to your $500 school fee. So you pay your $100 and then you only have to pay $400 after that, or plus the others. So does that all make sense to folks? Hopefully. I can only see people I work with to see if they're nodding. So that's Matt, are there any, did I get that all right?
Yeah, that was perfect. Good job, Mary.
Thanks. And then how do the internships work? So I'm going to kind of cover this a little bit and then turn it over to Taylor. So for internships, all field school students are welcome to apply for internships. We only hire people who have taken our field school into our internships. We see the field school as a way to really train people. So as soon as they're hired, they can kind of hit the ground running. Your application should include basically a cover letter saying similar things of how the internship is going to help you meet your career goals, why it's a good fit for you. We interview all the applicants during the end of field school, like sort of the last week of field school. You'll sit down with Terry and I will ask you some questions and do an interview. And you're going to find out if you're hired that last week of field school. So it feels a little crazy because for those of you who really are interested in the internship, you're going, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do next week. Do I have a job here? Do I not? Yes, we know that that's crazy, but it's also a way that we can really get to know you really well over the month. So there's the interview, the questions, but also how you've performed in field school the whole time. Our interns are all paid. We pay the minimum wage, but you also receive full benefits. So that means things like health insurance, retirement, all sorts of things, dental, vision, all sorts of things, life insurance, really exciting stuff as you move out of school. And you also receive housing in Arlington. So you get free housing as being an intern. But I want to turn it over to Taylor a little bit to kind of talk about the experience. And Chris said this is a great selection of pictures, and all credit goes to Taylor because she put these together. I got no credit for this.
Yeah, so I put all these pictures up as kind of representative of a lot of the stuff you get to do as an intern. So when I came to Montpelier's field school, I'd only ever done underwater work before. And so field school was the first time I'd worked on a terrestrial site, and you really learn everything for the internship that you'll need on the field school. So don't be stressed out if you've never done archaeology before, because the field school is that training that you need. So yeah, you get selected for the internship. Throughout the internship, you are basically full-time working at Montpelier as an archaeologist, which is a really incredible opportunity. Part of the internship also includes, it was a little different with COVID, with conferences being canceled and rescheduled, but you kind of take on an individual research project. So during my internship, I looked at the field slave quarters, which is actually pretty close to where you guys will be working in the blacksmith shop this summer. And I looked for evidence of the kinds of practices the enslaved people living there did to take care of their own health. And so there's a blog post up on the website and a presentation that I did that you guys can look at. But so not only are you embroiled in the day-to-day life of what it's like to work as an archaeologist at Montpelier, you're also given the opportunity to kind of pursue your own research interests and really utilize all of the resources Montpelier has to do your own project, which really taught me how to start a project and finish it. And what's also super cool is through all this experience you're going to get at Montpelier, it really sets you up really well for where you want to go after Montpelier. So one of the reasons I won't be at field school with you guys is I actually got into master's programs starting in the fall. And I credit a lot of that to just the experience I was able to gain at Montpelier and working with this incredible team of archaeologists. And what's also super cool is, so these are all photos that I took over my past 2 years. And you can see the other interns that I worked with, Kiana and Hannah and Elizabeth. And we were, I mean, I'm still friends with them today. And so not only do you get to grow professionally, but you also get to make some really cool connections and friendships and relationships through this place. So if you're thinking at all about going for the internship, I would definitely recommend it because it really is a great place, especially if you're recently graduated, kind of ready to set yourself up as a springboard. Montpelier is a really, really good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. I also want to mention that in the application process, there's a checkbox if you're interested in the internship. If for some reason you did not initially check that box and you are now interested, that's okay. Or if you initially check the box and it comes to the end of field school and you're no longer interested, that's okay too. We don't force people that checked a box in the beginning to apply at the end of field school, and we don't restrict people who didn't check the box in the beginning to not be allowed to be interviewed. However, if you think now, if you submitted your application and you didn't check that box, but now you think you're really interested in the internship, shoot Sarah Lee an email, dig@montpelier.org, and just let her know, because that is something on our sort of spreadsheet of applicants we do look at.
And after this, if you have any questions about the internship you think of after or want answered a little more privately, I can also put my email in the chat so you can get some firsthand questions answered.
And I'd just like to say that as a supervisor, the internship is one of my favorite parts of working at Montpelier. We have interns who are professional archaeologists, are in graduate programs, are in PhD programs, are doing working in cultural resource management and government, doing just really amazing, fabulous things all over the country. And it's been really special to kind of have been a part of their early career and getting them started. And so we always see them at conferences and all kinds of things. So you're not just getting this year-long experience and making some friends with the other interns who are here, but you're also becoming kind of part of a much larger group of professionals who've worked at Montpelier, have had that same experience, and who are doing things in the field. So I just got an email yesterday from Caitlin to talk about a job she's interested in applying for, who's an intern that we had 4 years ago, Mary. So so these are all things that it's a really great community to get to be a part of.
And one thing to add to that, between Terry, Mary, and myself, we know basically every historical archaeologist on the planet. So, because we have, we're all have similar backgrounds in terms of plantation archaeology, but we come from, 3 very different graduate schools, 3 very different regions. So what we, like Terry and Mary are saying, and Taylor as well, we love to share our contacts with the interns, and we see the internship as a professional internship, meaning we want to put our interns into the profession of archaeology. So we take that very seriously, and it's, in many ways very selfish of us, because if our interns succeed and they become professionals, we've got some amazing colleagues, and we absolutely do. We have at the Society for Historical Archaeology conference, we do a happy hour every year. Well, this is pre-COVID, we hope to get back to that, but we fill a bar with the 20 years of interns and staff and folks that have come through the program, and we take a lot of pride, and like Terry said, that's one of our most favorite things about our program. So
Callie asked a good question about how long is the internship, and Chris answered it. It is a year. So it'll start literally the day after field school. and it will go through. Our hope is for it to go through the following field school. That's kind of what we have in mind. Of course, interns will inherently start to land jobs sometime during the spring, because there are field seasons all over the country to get ready for. So and we are never going to stand in the way of someone trying to getting employment or what have you. So usually sometime either before the end of the next field school or starting in April is kind of when field school students or interns start to move on, excuse me.
So,
Sage asked about rest days. We have weekends for this field school is when those days are. So we'll be out in the field from 7:30 until, I think we're going to do 7:30 to 3 this year, and then you'll have the rest of the afternoon. Field school will be Monday through Friday. We have one day that is going to be career day that we do every year. We bring in panels of archaeologists from part of the networks that we were talking about earlier to talk about different aspects of the career. We'll talk about applying for jobs, about what it's like to be an archaeologist in this field, the different types of primarily non-academic, non-higher ed jobs that you can do in archaeology, because those are most of the jobs in archaeology. So that will be a day that we won't be in the field, but talking about a lot of those things. But otherwise, it's going to be 7:30 to 3 Monday through Friday is the schedule.
And we do, like during the field school, we are going to be doing tours on the property. Usually during the field school, we do a field trip, but with COVID, it's just not possible this year because we can't put 5 people in a car and go anywhere, and it's unfortunate, but it's what we're glad that we're able to do this year is even have a field school, and we want to do that safely. But with 2,700 acres, there's lots of sites to see, and we'll be taking you on those throughout the 5 weeks, the 4 weeks that you're here. So while the lectures are virtual, field trips, the tours are not virtual. They're across sites, across the property.
And if you like to hike, we have over 10 miles of trails on the property to hike. So there's a lot of hiking, lots of hiking.
And on the weekend, there's the Shenandoah National Park is within a 45-minute drive. So there's lots to see around the area.
hey, Matt, do you want to answer the question in the chat?
Yes, for students that are out of state and don't have transportation, that's going to be, cannot promise that being anything more than difficult, because the problem, like Mary said, is we're 6 miles from a store. You can't walk along Route 20. I would not ride a bike. I've had nightmares about riding my bike on Route 20. I would just not do it. 20 years I've been here at Montpelier, I do not ride my bike on, it's just not safe to do. We have had students that have come on the field school that haven't had a car in the past. A lot of what they have done is they brought their own food, and that's what you'd almost be required. You'd be required to do this time. Is literally we've had some folks come with MREs and they've eaten those the entire time. That's what you'd need to expect, is to be able to bring your own food. If it's pouring out rain, you're going to need to walk to the site because we can't share rides. Again, the reason why we're taking COVID so seriously is if we have a COVID situation that happens, the whole field school gets shut down, and then everybody is out of the field school experience. So if you're going to come to field school and you don't have transportation, you need to be prepared to, be able to be self-sufficient. And again, if there is a COVID outbreak and everybody has to go home, everybody has to be able to go home. There's no way to shelter in place at Montpelier because we don't have food services like a university does, where universities can put people up in a local hotel and have food services delivered them by the campus food provider. We don't have any of that. So COVID is presenting some special challenges, and Mary has said this many times. COVID has brought up what in the past have been smaller problems have really put a magnifying glass on it. And people coming to Montpelier for the month without a car, it's offered special challenges, and it's been sometimes where the biggest stresses come from, and personalities of folks have come through that usually don't come through. So it's if you don't have a car and you're willing to meet these challenges, we would want to talk with you about this before coming. We really would, because it's something that is going to have to be overcome, and we don't have a way to, really with COVID, we don't have a way to assist with this. It's going to be, you're going to need to be self-sufficient. So it is possible, but it's going to take a lot of work.
I think the thing that we really don't want to do is we don't want to put any of your fellow classmates or interns in a position where they have to be in a closed car with someone else with COVID. Kayla also asks if you live close enough to commute to the site every day, would it be possible to remain living at home? And the answer is yes.
Yep,
Absolutely.
That's what everyone who works at Montpelier is going to be doing. So that's perfectly fine.
Yep. So last couple things, anything else I need to know? Matt mentioned this before. We do have a no alcohol policy for our field school. So that means you can't have alcohol in Arlington House. Montpelier also has a sexual harassment policy. Our department, we have an anti-racism policy. So there are these other sort of kind of protections and concerns that we have in there. Again, these are things that are really focused on safety. So I am going to stop sharing. And I think Matt or Terry, are there any last thoughts you have before we open up to some more questions?
Mary,
I was just going to throw a link to the values document in the chat as well, which I think will give you a good feel for kind of how we conduct ourselves as a department on a day-to-day basis, and a thing that we take pretty seriously, and particularly, it's just one of the things that you'll be evaluated on as a field school student, and stuff like that. So I'll throw that in the chat as well.
The only thing I was going to add, this is a great presentation you put together, Mary. Thank you. You covered it a lot. But one thing is that, and this is in the values document that Terry's going to send a link to, is we do put a lot of value on professionalism, on family, on really also, like we've mentioned throughout this, making sure that everybody's comfortable, but then also setting expectations. I mean, when field school students come for the month, those field school students, we treat the field school students like staff. So there's a lot of expectations, but it also puts a lot of chances for growth and learning with the students. And I think everybody that's taken a field school walks away with a solid understanding of what it means to be a field archaeologist and a lab archaeologist.
So do any of you all have any questions? You can either unmute yourself and ask them or throw them up in the chat. Okay, I see one from Rebecca. It says, you mentioned that there would be lectures during field school. Will we get a sense of the different type of plantation landscape, settlement patterns, layout throughout the Chesapeake and Mid-Atlantic? You're gonna let a lot of landscape stuff in the lectures. Matt, do you wanna tackle that? That seems very much up your alley.
Yeah, we, in terms of the lectures during the field school, like Mary mentioned, we're gonna be front loading those during that first week. And a lot of the lectures that we're doing are giving you all a sense of how the site you're working on relates to the rest of Montpelier. We also have a lot of discussions about how Montpelier fits into, to the region. The primary focus of the field school is field and lab techniques and the practical aspects of that. So we don't have extensive lectures on like archaeology of the Chesapeake or of the Atlantic diaspora world. I mean, we would love to, but that's like a whole nother course. What we're focused on is like really hands-on archaeology and giving people this understanding of the stratigraphy, the artifacts, how that relates to the questions that we ask, how that relates to what we do with interpreting these spaces that we're doing research on and why we do that. So it's really in many ways super focused on Montpelier to put what you're experiencing in the field in context with what you see all around you. And that's where it's a very immersive experience that's really Montpelier focused.
So
Rebecca, that tends to be the types of things that we'll get into in the internship when you're working on an independent research project and things like that. That allows you to start taking a lot of the things that we're doing at Montpelier and start putting it into that bigger context, bigger regional context.
And we actually have a huge, well, I mean, it's a huge library for historical archaeology. We've been, for the past 20 years, have been gathering books on historical archaeology because we're in the middle of nowhere and we can't go to get interlibrary loans. So, and like Taylor's showing, for one of the benefits of the internship is you can check these books out and haul them back to your lair at Arlington House to look at them, and during the field school as well.
Kayla, cover letters for the internship. But go ahead, Mary.
No, we were just saying the same thing on top of each other.
It's because we share a brain. So you do not, the cover letter and applying for the internship is a thing that happens during the field school. We actually go over, one of the assignments that everybody has is what we call a career assignment. It happens after, or kind of during the career day. And for those people who are applying for the internship, that is often putting together your materials, your cover letter, resume, and stuff like that. For other students, it may be building out your LinkedIn profile, or working on a cover letter for a different job, or building your resume or your CV, things like that. We really want everyone to leave our field school prepared to get a job in archaeology, whether that is the internship with us or something else. We want everyone to be prepared for that. So it's actually applying for the internship is built into what you're learning how to do at Montpelier. And it's great because it means we all get really wonderful cover letters because we tell you how to write them.
So for the next question, Sage says she already applied, but if you want to change some of your answers, you can email your new answer to dig@montpelier.org and say, hey, I participated in the webinar and I wanted to update some of my answers, and Sarah Lee, our program coordinator, will get your new response or updated answer plugged into your application, kind of just doing it all on the back end. And then the next question, it says, if you're unable to apply for the internship after field school, can you apply for it again in the future? Yes, absolutely. So we will be hiring interns for this summer from Taylor's field school, probably, most likely, but every year, usually at the beginning of the summer, we send an email out to all of the interns that we've had for the past couple of years and say, hey, we're hiring again, would you be interested in coming back? So sometimes those come in just for the summer to be interns during the field school, and sometimes they come in just for the summer and then end up staying on for the whole year. So if you're interested, maybe you're earlier in school, maybe you're only a sophomore or something like that, or a junior, and you have to go back to school in the fall, so you can't do a year-long internship. That doesn't mean that you can't apply for it in the future. And a lot of our interns have done that. Our staff member, Hannah, did that several times after her field school, would come back for the summers before she did a full year-long internship. So that's definitely possible. And then, will there be one-on-one interviews for the field school? Will selection be based off your answers and references? So there won't be interviews for being admitted into field school. It's going to be based off your application packet. So what you submit for your short answer and your references. We don't have the bandwidth to do one-on-one interviews with But,
Haven asked about when you will know if we've been accepted. So I think the deadline is the 12th of March. Is that? I'm looking for nods from people like Matt who know the answer to that question. I believe it's the 12th. So Mary and I will start reviewing applications almost immediately, and then we'll start getting back to. We'll put the list together and we'll start getting back to people within the month of March, most definitely. You know, and again, we'll let the people know who we've accepted, and then we would really appreciate quick turnaround on your end. We know it's a big decision and everything, but we'd like to, you know, if you like definitely know you are coming no matter what, like please let us know. And if you're not going to be able to, please let us know ASAP, because there will be people waiting in the wings who may want the opportunity.
And yeah, if for some reason, you know, over the next month, you like Terry said, you're not able to attend the field school, whether you've heard back from us or not, letting us know is a huge help, because, you know, we want to extend the courtesy to let it, you know, have good communication with everyone. We'd love to have that back, because that really, with the number of applicants we have, that's one of the stumbling blocks we have, is waiting to hear from someone that we've accepted. A lot of times we have to give it a week, and if we don't hear back from you, we move on to the next candidate.
Colby's question about recommenders. Yes, when you submit your recommenders' names, it does trigger us to contact them asking for the recommendation. But it's a good idea just to kind of give them a heads up. And if it's coming close to the deadline and, you know, you're one shy, we'll often, you know, reach out to that recommender again. So we will do that. But it's always good to double check with them. And then the next question. So for applying for the field school, you just have to submit the field school, fill out the field school form and submit the essay, and it has the recommenders. So you don't have to email any additional materials to dig at montpelier.org. Those materials will come if you're applying for the internship, which happens after you're accepted to the field school. During the course of the field school is when we want your cover letter and that stuff sent to us. So you don't have to send any of that at this point. So I think those are all the questions we have in the chat. Does anybody else have a question that they want to throw in the chat? Or David, I
got a question.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm up here in Alaska. So if I was to be accepted and come down, what is, I mean, obviously I can't bring a car. Canada won't let us through. What is the feasibility of rental cars in Orange County, Orange City?
County.
County.
And the town.
And the town of Orange, exactly.
Is the capital of the county of Orange.
Imagine you'd be coming by rail or by train or by on plane, and wherever the airports are and the train stations are, there's places you can rent cars.
Okay.
So your nearest airport's going to be Charlottesville, but it's quite small. You're near or Richmond, which is a little bigger, but the nearest big options are going to be all the DC airports, Reagan, National, and Dulles, which are about an hour and a half to 2 hours away. Dulles is about an hour and a half. National is about
drivable.
Yeah,
definitely drivable.
Yeah, Charlottesville Airport does do rentals. It's just often you can fly into DC and then they fly you to Charlottesville, and you get there faster if you just drive. There is also a train station in Charlottesville and one in Culpeper, which is another town that is close by. So Amtrak.
Y'all have any other questions?
So I had applied earlier, and one of my teachers who I've been on her to submit her reference just says that she can't find it. I told her to check her inbox, her junk box and stuff, because sometimes it goes there. But if she just can't find it, is there a way for me to have her just send the recommendation letter?
Diana, just I would say you email dig@montpelier.org with your recommender's contact information, and ask Sarah Lee if she can resend the form.
And then Colby asked, will there be a COVID testing protocol prior to or upon arrival? Matt, do you want to take that?
Yeah, we do not have a requirement for being tested for COVID. What we do ask is that everyone does 2 weeks of socially isolating and quarantining before arrival, because that is the best way. If you get tested a week before and you're not following, social distancing policy, it doesn't do any good. So really what we want is to have folks be isolating and quarantining before arrival. That's the only way to be successful with this pandemic. And that's what we're going to be doing as staff.
Yep, and also every morning, everyone's going to be filling out the COVID, a form every morning. I'm sure for those of you in school, you are all probably very accustomed to all of this and probably better at it than we all are, because I just work from home all day. So, but you'll be filling out a form every morning and stuff like that. So, so yeah, if you've got the sniffles or feeling warm, you stay home.
And Sage asked if you need to be vaccinated to come. No, we're not requiring vaccinations to come because we don't think that's realistic for so many of us in so many different states and so many different areas. And I'm looking at you all, and most of you look under age 70. So, or
hey, if you can get vaccinated though, oh my goodness, get vaccinated. So
yes. We strongly encourage vaccination, but we didn't want to require it because it's the challenges of getting vaccinated in each state are incredibly different. So any other questions that folks have?
And again, if you guys think of questions about the internship later on, or just want to talk to someone about what day-to-day life as an intern looked like, definitely email me. If you didn't catch my email in the chat, you can also email Dig, and Sarah Lee will connect us. So I know coming in, it would probably be really nice to kind of pick someone's brain in the position you're going for. So I'd totally be up to talk about that and let you guys know whatever you need.
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, if there's any questions that we didn't answer, certainly you can always email Dig and Sarah Lee will answer them, or she'll pass it on to one of us. Or if you have a question specifically for any of us, she can forward you to us. Matt did record this, so this will be available and we'll be able to share it. So if you have a friend or a classmate that is also interested in coming on the field school but they couldn't join, we can certainly share it with them. You can come back to it in case there's something that you missed that you can't remember. That's certainly available. But we really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us, to listen, to ask really, really good, thoughtful questions. It just, it speaks really highly about all of you that you're putting through this extra effort at, 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. So thank you so much for that. Matt, Terry, is there anything else you want to kind of say to wrap up?
No, just, again, thank you for taking the time. And I'd encourage you all to, it's like, this is like the required thing to do at the end of the Zoom, but check us out on social media. But really do, because you're actually going to see what we're doing, what the projects are that we're working on, the methods that we're using, we're going to be doing Facebook Lives and things like that from the site. So it'll be a good way, particularly for those of you who end up getting accepted, to kind of hit the ground running and know what the project is and what we're doing ahead of time. So there's actually a very practical reason to do it. So anyway, thank you, everybody. It's good. It's really nice to see you all. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time for not only for tonight, but also for applying for the field school. Having such a great set of candidates means we're going to have a successful field school. So really appreciate it. And there are, like Mary and Terry said, if you not able to do this field school, there's always next field school. And we've had a number of people that have done the week-long program that for some reason just the field school hasn't been able to work out. They've come on our week-long programs as well. And then the next year been even in a stronger position to do the field school because we see how wonderful you all are and put you at the top of the list. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Be safe.
you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'm at.
See you, Chris. I couldn't figure out how to get out. There it is. Have a good
Yeah, I
night,
was
Chris.
like, I'm hitting the wrong button. See ya.
All right, bye.